The sinking of the Indianapolis has to be one of the most tragic incidents in World War II. This was a ship that delivered parts of the atomic bomb called Little Boy to Tinian, from where the B-29 Enola Gate delivered the bomb from Tinian to Hiroshima. The helm would search for possible survivors of a missing ship, the USS Indianapolis. In 4 days of searching, the helm found only dead, shark-bitten bodies. Riding in a motor whaleboat along with crew members, we gathered any dog tags still attached for identification. I kept hoping I would not find a tag with the name of Robert Billings, a hometown friend. I had visited with him on the Indianapolis several months earlier in Pearl Harbor. I didn't, yet I found out later he didn't survive. Only a scout plane found actual survivors. They directed the USS Bassett to the location for the rescue of 161 of almost 300 that survived. And as fate would have it, the bomb they delivered would end the war they had been fighting so hard to win. Zigzagging back to Buckner Bay, we heard of the bomb drops and knew the war was over. I had promised a war-end party to my crew, and this was the time. Inside the bay, we dropped anchor right near the battleship Pennsylvania. From the 3 bottles of bourbon I had stashed away for 2.5 years, I poured drinks for my dauntless crew in our tightly guarded radar shack. We had just finished a toast to the war's end when this happened. I was violently thrown to the deck. Now, in utter darkness, I struggled through broken bottles and glasses to the flying bridge to find this. The stern of the Pennsylvania was engulfed with fire. The Pennsylvania survived, but 20 lives were needlessly taken. Things were quite routine the last 2 weeks in August, but in September got exciting. As the world focused on Tokyo Bay, the helm was steaming to the Bonin Islands. Its mission to protect the Bonin Island surrender proceedings to be held aboard the USS Dunlop. But then, upon arriving the evening before, it looked like maybe we were the one that needed help. Suddenly the lookout on the port side yells out, "Periscope!" When sonar verifies contact, Captain Peterson is faced with a difficult decision. The war is over. Do we drop depth charges? The problem, however, resolved itself when we lost contact. In the morning, through field glasses, I watched as General Yoshio Tachibana move towards the Dunlop, flying his white flag of surrender. I label this man as the Beast of the Bonins, since he killed and cannibalized every pilot that was unlucky enough to be captured by him. Justice was served, however. He was executed for his war crimes. Well, back home, the folks were still rejoicing, and this famous photo tells it all. The helm's final mission tied in again with the surrender terms. Sasebo was Japan's major naval port, and the Marines were assigned the duty to take over as the helm furnished protection by its presence. En route to Sasebo, we would pass Nagasaki, where Big Boy, the second nuclear bomb, was dropped. This was about a month after the August explosion. The captain approached Nagasaki as close as possible to prevent any contamination. What I viewed through the binoculars was devastating, as one would expect. I was so sad for the Japanese people, but thankful that it was the final atomic bomb of the war. Through the perilous Pacific, as yours came to pass, she defied death's destruction midships of her class. And when suddenly it ended one glorious day, she delivered us home safely from war and harm's way. And that's the way I ended my ship's story that I posted on YouTube. Next is my personal story of how I left the ship and became a civilian once again. But before that happened, however, we completed our short mission in Sasebo and then headed for Okinawa, where I'd leave for home. Our big challenge was to get to Okinawa before the typhoon. The previous year, we had survived 2 terrible typhoons. Typhoon Cobra was the worst. Over 100 planes damaged. As a result, I thought I'd be better off ashore, but I was wrong, and I'll tell you why later as we approached Typhoon Louise. The helm beat the storm's arrival. Next day, though, I was ashore, and I wished we were at sea again. The point system by the military said those who volunteered first would also be first to be released. That's why I was leaving the ship for the nearby naval station to await transportation, complicated by the fact that a horrible typhoon was on its way. I was housed with 6 other officers in a tent, wooden floor and a wooden frame. The very next day, the typhoon descended on us. To keep our tent from blowing over, prepared to reinforce the windward side by crawling to the ropes and taking turns all night long. It paid off, and we were the only tent in the area still standing. We were lucky to survive. 83 people were killed. Many ships in the harbor damaged. All mess halls were down, and I found a fence torn down and an area surrounding stored rations. And I was lucky enough to pick up large tins of ham, sweet potatoes, and share them with my tent mate. And we spent the rest of the day cleaning up our area. I came upon a group of guys lined up to fill 40 openings on a seaplane tender in port, ready to take them back to the United States. Since more than 40 were waiting, a few began dropping out, and I stuck around hoping to be among those who might make it. And then a miracle happened. They split the line in 2 to speed up the process, and in a couple of hours I was aboard a ship in the harbor, ready to go home. And there she is, the seaplane tender which will take me home. Once again, our American way of life was preserved. The tender was larger and more comfortable than my destroyer, and we were steaming towards San Francisco with only one stop en route. Halfway there was Midway Island, appropriately named. The men there in 1942 completely turned the tide of the war, with naval forces sinking 4 of Japan's major carriers, and never again would the Japanese have the strength and air power to ever win the war. The most interesting part on arriving was the sound and the actions of what appeared to be our greeting committee, the crazy antics of the Goonie birds. After leaving Midway, we continued what seemed like eternity, not days, until we finally reached San Francisco. I couldn't wait. My wife would be there in San Francisco, waiting for me at the California Hotel. For almost 3 years, I had written letters every single day. We had a deal that when my letter was stamped upside down, I'd be coming home. and there'd be directions where to meet with him. As soon as we docked, I jumped off the ship almost running to the nearest phone booth. I called Hazel after a slight delay. Huge disappointment. The clerk said she had checked out the day before. Her stay during the war was limited to 3 days, and she had left no forwarding address. I immediately got a roll of nickels, the cost of a phone call at that time, plus the yellow pages with hundreds of hotels listed. And then a miracle. My second nickel hit the jackpot. Hazel answered the phone. In a matter of hours, we were on the train headed for Chicago's Great Lakes, a naval station where I would be formally discharged and start a new life together with Hazel.